Day 3 and Day 4 of Noxus Cup is just around the corner, but in order to celebrate for the Noxus Cup coming in, the last cup of the entirety of set 9 and 9.5, we are going to be watching today a VOD from Day 1 of Noxus Cup from none other than Ramblin. Now in today's video, Ramblin makes a lot of very interesting decisions that I don't think a lot of players would make, especially not myself, so I definitely want to hear you guys' opinion. You guys' opinion, is that even correct English? But I want to hear you guys' thoughts on the way that he played this game and whether or not you would have done the same thing, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. It's a very interesting game that we got on our hands today, and let's just get on to today's video. Okay, so here we go. We are inside of Ramblin's game. Now, Ramblin is sort of a TFT pro player that you may or may not have heard of, depending on how deep your feet go into the TFT pro scene. The TFT pro scene is actually quite a deep pool, but if you're just getting your feet wet, you might not know who this player is, and that's probably because you're probably more familiar with names like Dish Soap, Robin Songs, K3 Soju, right? Setsuko. These are the players who are consistently top of the solo queue ladder and are constantly grinding TFT day in, day out. Ramblin is not really known for his solo queue grinding, but rather for his performances in competitive tournaments. Just to give you an idea, at the peak of his career, so at least so far, right, he was a 4th place runner in the Gizmos and Gadgets and a regional finals, which regional finals is like the biggest region cup within a singular region per set, so that's insane, right? And also 3rd place in the NA mid-set finale, so he has a couple other accolades as well, but those are the main ones that people tend to focus on when it comes to Ramblin. So he is a very talented player, don't get me wrong, okay? So in today's video, we want to be watching this game in particular because I really enjoyed his approach to this game. And there's definitely some things I disagree with, so there are things that we wanted to talk to you guys about. We didn't talk too much about stage 1. He did sell the Jace in the early game. I don't know if you caught that or not, but he did sell it because Piltover is kind of dookie right now. So unless you really high roll Piltover, it's probably not a great way to be playing the game at the current state of the patch. Now, Jewel Lotus, Bronze Ticket, Inconsistency. Now, if we just rewind a little bit, we can see our board right here. Our board is not too hot. We have a Malzahar pair, Ori pair, Alawi pair, Milio pair, right, and a Samira and a Fury. So our board is not the best, and our items don't lean us in any particular direction. Redemption Slamming being the only thing that could maybe be on the table for us at the current moment, but even that's only if you're playing like Cho'Gath reroll or something. So even the Redemption Slamming is a very niche case scenario. Adaptive Helm is okay, but nothing that great, and Evan Shroud is alright, but not something you really want to be slamming at 2-1. It's kind of like Evan Shroud versus Last Whisper. You almost always would rather have Last Whisper, but I guess it depends on the comp. If you're playing Neela, then maybe you want Evan Shroud, but I mean, it depends. Anyways, Jewel Lotus, Bronze Ticket, Inconsistency. Now, off rip, you should already know what you want to be doing here, right? Inconsistency is like almost a gold augment. It's like really close to being a gold augment. It's not exactly worth a gold augment slot, but it's like very close. If this is like the closest a silver augment can be to a gold augment, this augment is disgusting. Basically, you don't have to care about streaking the whole game. You will get rewarded with basically a 3 streak, or the equivalent, or rather, I believe is the equivalent of a 4 streak, as long as you just don't get anything higher than a 2 streak, right? So it's really, really nice. So Inconsistency is such a terrific silver augment. It's almost everybody's go-to. It's just such a good augment to have, so you don't feel bad about losing your streak ever, which is super, super nice. It's good for the mental. Jewel Lotus is not great at 2-1, and Bronze Ticket is not that great. I mean, it's okay right now, because you could maybe potentially play into some rerolls, but reroll definitely got heavily nerfed rather in the previous patch, so maybe not something we want to be taking here. So reroll middle and left side. Iron Asses, Bruiser Heart, they're okay. Again, Bruiser Heart might have been alright if we had like Cho'Gath 2 maybe at 2-1 here, because with the Redemption Slam, actually it would be very nice. We'd also have half a Declaw, but unfortunately that isn't the case here, so we are going to go with Inconsistency. Now, our board here, I want you to pause and think about this spot, right? In this spot, what would you do? We have Inconsistency, and we're sitting on 5 different pairs. Alawi pair, Ori pair, Mal's pair, Milio pair, Samira pair. And, and the Fury pair. 6 pairs. We're sitting on 6 pairs in this spot. What would you do in this spot? I want you to think about it, because what Ramblin decides to do is not what I would do, personally speaking. But I would personally, in this spot, hold all the pairs. We're Inconsistency. We don't mind losing. We don't mind winning, right? Does not matter to us. But I would personally like to hit some upgrades as soon as possible. It alleviates a lot of the HP damage you're going to be taking within this current stage if you're able to just hit a couple of upgrades here. So things like Samira 2, Nefiri 2, Alawi 2, these are all very, very strong upgrades. And actually, personally speaking, at least right now, I am not the biggest fan of Sorks, especially without a Void opener. So I would probably even sell the Oriana pair potentially and try to hold on to the Poppy and the Aurelia and maybe even the Renekton here, right? I don't know if the math adds up exactly, but that is what I would do, right? Sitting on this many pairs, you stay level 3, try to hit one of the naturals. But Ramblin has other plans. He just sells everything. He sold everything, said, fuck that shit, fuck all that noise, I'm just gonna make 10. Fair enough. The reasoning that I would assume is because by sort of selling everything and going into 10, you're already sort of leaning slightly into Samira reroll from this spot. And again, Samira reroll, for those of you who don't know, if you've been living under a rock, Samira 3, Naafiri 3 is ideal. You tempo into 7 Noxus. But there are a couple problems with this plan. Samira reroll is not that strong when you don't have a Noxus crest. It's actually very, very poor without a Noxus crest. The reason being is because 7 Noxus is very hard to hit because you need a Scion. But Noxus Crest alleviates this problem, so the hardest unit you're trying to find as the game hits the mid game and the late game is just a Mordekaiser, which is a lot easier to hit than a 1% Scion at level 7, or I guess a 4% at level 8. Really hard to find. So definitely better off trying to not play into Samira reroll or leaning into Samira reroll unless we have that Noxus Crest going. So we do have the 4 Samiras, which is kind of cool. But here we open the anvil and we miss on tier. If we had hit tier from this spot, you can maybe make the justification to try to play into Samira reroll, especially with 4 Samiras at 2-3. But again, we missed blue buff. So it would be ideal if we had blue buff here and we could be like, okay, you know what, fine. But even if we had hit blue buff in this spot, we don't actually have any Samira items to play into. We'd be blue buff guard breaker, which is kind of okay, but it's definitely not ideal. You want things like GS, stuff like IE, you know, to really play off the fact that you're armor trading the crap out of your opponent's units. So hitting Rod, Cloak, Chain, and Sword here, it's not the best. So what would you take from the spot, right? Personally speaking, I don't fucking know. I would actually be a little lost, personally speaking, in this spot. These components are not great. Any 4 of these combinations of components is not ideal. You're stuck with things like Vow. Sunfire is okay for tempo, but we're not tempoing right now. Rod is not that great. We don't really want Spark. We're not leaning into AD. And Sword is kind of okay, but it's not the best because, like, we're not really BT slamming, right? Like, there's no way. So, out of everything here, Chain is sort of the only, like, kind of real possibility because it's like half of Bramble Vest. And for those of you who didn't watch the meta analysis, know that Bramble Vest is an insanely strong item in the current meta because it really negates a lot of the damage and the burst that comes out of playing into Vanquishers, because right now it is very heavily still an Ionia Vanquisher meta. So here, as we can see, Ramblin is also like, dude, what the fuck are these components? So he just starts component spreading because he's just like, well, what else am I supposed to do with any of these? But he wants to derive some level of value out of his components because usually, a general rule of thumb, is if you have 4 open components, you want to be slamming an item as soon as possible. Just because, you know, you're sort of greeting way too hard in terms of your components here. So if you see here, Ramblin is, you know, he has the tier actually available to him to potentially lean into some reroll and just commit. But again, no Noxus spat, it's really, really hard to play into. So what does he do here? I would actually argue he should have taken the Chain Vest in this spot. Chain Vest makes a lot of sense to me because it's Warwick pair, but also you get to have the Bramble Vest. But here we see he actually optimizes for a Declaw instead, which is actually very, very prudent. Here he goes for the Declaw, and the reason why is because he noticed that when he scouted very quickly, it's actually a bit of a heavy AP lobby. So he sees that because there's a bunch of AP players, he actually opts for the Declaw first and then maybe find the Bramble Vest later on. We did get the chain from a component anvil, so the odds of us not finding another chain is pretty low. We're probably gonna natural one sooner or later, right? So there we go, level to 5 here. Again, it's for the inconsistency value, but also because our board is decently strong enough with 2 Juggernaut and 4 Challenger, and we're gonna be cruising with this board. And because of inconsistency, we're able to make 30 pretty comfortably here at 2-6, which is very, very nice. 30 gold, 2-6, level 5. I mean, what more could you ask for? We are playing a very, very perfect inconsistency game so far. Garnered basically like, what is it, like 6 extra gold. Technically, I guess now 7 extra gold compared to everybody else. Because of the inconsistency, which is super nice. And then on top of interest, actually 7 is probably incorrect, but you get the idea. Generate a lot of econ here, really, really cool. So here, going into 3-1 here, we are 50 gold. We are trying to stay inconsistent, so not slamming anything here is definitely the move. Again, our items are really, really fucking awkward here. So like, how the hell do we, like, what's our direction here? Rod tier, belt, right? Like, what do you do in the spot? Again, you want to be trying to slam something here in the spot ideally, but we have nothing that can really help us out here. So Ramblin's actually doing a pretty interesting job here. He doesn't want to component slam anymore here just because he's not sure if he's going to be sticking onto these units for a really long time, especially units like the Darius and like maybe the Katarina, maybe playing to Noxus, maybe playing to a little bit of the Mordekaiser. Very strong forecast in the moment. So what do we do with these components here? And what do you know? Pandora's items. Pandora's items helps us so much because our items are actually dog shit because they don't point us in any direction. So Pandora's items is super nice here. Healing Orb is also great. Very strong combat augment, especially for silver augment. But in this scenario, we have to consider, hey, if we go with a combat augment like healing orbs, what are we gonna do with our items? Like, it's really fucked if we don't do anything about it, right? So we do need to do something to fix this problem here, and taking Pandora's items is very prudent, very smart. And here he is sitting on Pandora's items Inconsistency, 46 gold. This is a very interesting spot because Ramblin again does something that I would not have done in this spot. Ramblin, actually, sorry, let me talk about what I would do. Actually, no. Critical thinking. This is good. What would you do? I feel like that NBC show though. What is it called? What would you do? You know, but like it's important to think about it. Like, what would you do in the spot, right? Would you roll? Would you level? Would you sit? What's your game plan from the spot, right? Personally speaking, from this spot, did you get your answer yet? I'm gonna say mine. I would sit. If you consider how much gold we're sitting on and how little pairs we're sitting on just this Darius and I guess the Warwick pair, right? Because it's in a shop. Darius pair, Warwick pair, the Fury pair. Actually, it's 3 pairs. It's actually kind of a lot. But regardless, we are decently healthy. 79 is not that bad. If we sack 2, we're probably sitting at around maybe around 60, 65 maybe, right? Because our board's not weak. So 65 HP is fine. I would just personally level 735 it. We have so much money. If you exclude the Darius and the Fury and the Warwick here, that's down to 44. So 47, 49, 50, 54. We have 54 gold. We have 54 gold to work with. And then you sack 2. And then with Inconsistency, that gives us what? Like an extra like 20, 30, 25-ish gold, right? To be working with. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's not even taking into, did I take into account interest? I think I did, but something like that, 25 gold, extra 25. And then we push 7 and you can roll on 3-5. That is personally what I would do, personally speaking. And then we could go to level 7 and then we just spike our board a little bit and then we could just chill with a little bit of Inconsistency and then we could just flex around whatever forecast we find. That is how I would have approached this spot. But Ramblin does something interesting here, and he actually says, no, I think instead it's probably better because I'm sitting on 3 pairs. I should probably roll here and try to find some level of a spike, right? Here's an Fury 2 pair. He's only still sitting on 2 pairs now instead of 3. We're still sitting on, actually, he sold the Warwicks. We're not even sitting on the Warwick pair anymore. And we're sitting on a 5 Noxus board. And I think for him, he says, okay, I rolled slightly. I want to make sure that my board spikes just enough, and then we're going to be chilling in the spot. I don't know how I feel about that. Because the fact that he rolled a little bit on 3-2 means that he's probably going to be sitting on this board until 4-1. So is 5 Noxus enough to make it all the way to 4-1? And personally speaking, I would argue it's not. I feel like you would lose a lot of HP, at least based off his 3-2 board. He didn't hit the Darius 2 before that. But until he hit the Darius 2, I would say that this board was a little too weak to make it all the way through stage 3 without losing a decent amount of HP. And again, we are Inconsistency, so winning a little, losing a little is ideal. But that doesn't mean that like we should stick with this, in my opinion, very weak board. And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If you think that the 5 Noxus spike was enough, that's fine. 3-unit loss, not that bad. But I feel like this board is not enough and you lose a little too much HP trying to sack all the way to 4-1. Because you can, there's no way to 3-5 anymore. You cannot 3-5 from the spot. As you may or may not notice, he also saved a belt. This is completely off topic. But he actually saved the belt. And the reason why is because he's probably going to be leaning into Mordekaiser this game. We're playing Noxus. We just keep playing up into the vertical. Try to play into 7 Noxus ideally. Or we tech down to 3 and then we just play around a Mordekaiser flex board, right? So we do get the Nashers. And Nashers, for those of you who don't know, is an incredibly strong item on Mordekaiser. It's one of his best items. I would actually argue it's better than RFC. Like if you could choose between RFC and Nashers, I would actually go with Nashers every single time. The reason being is because Nashers, as soon as Mordekaiser casts, he just gets 40% bonus attack speed and just keeps bonking the shit out of the opponents, right? And it basically looks like Nox's Whack-A-Mole. Like, it's really nice. This Mordekaiser gets to do a bunch of extra bonus damage because Nashus is enabling him so hard. But again, like I said before, he is losing a bit too much HP here. And again, the tempo of the lobby is pretty high here. So being able to have spiked here on 3-5 a little bit and then being able to play around a couple of stronger units, I think was the better choice here, because you definitely do survive. Like, you save like maybe 5-10 more HP if you just like spiked and you win these last two on 3-5 and 3-6. Or sorry, 3-6 and... Yeah, 3-5, 3-6. It's been a while since we've done one of these commentaries, right? But nonetheless, I still think that he could have probably spiked a little harder. And then here, unfortunately, he does lose a lot of HP. We're down to 45. Also, from the spot, I would save a bow just because RFC makes a lot of sense here. I'm kind of surprised he doesn't actually save the bow here on his bench here, because yes, Nash's Tooth is nice, but wouldn't saving a bow for potentially RFC BIS Mordekaiser make a lot of sense? Like, Nash's is great, RFC is great. In this situation, you don't actually have to play for one or the other. You can play for both. So I'm a little surprised to see that he doesn't prioritize RFC very much here, which is a bit of a surprise here. He actually immediately, oh, this is so beautiful. So here immediately recognizes, right? Look at his bench. He has Silco and he has Nasus pair, and nobody would ever think to play Mordekaiser with a Noxus and Silco on their board. It's a very weird combination here, right? But he knows he's 45 HP and he knows that he needs to spike his board ASAP. So he sees immediately on his bench that he has blue buff Morello. So he says, fuck it, let's send it. We're gonna just immediately make those items, throw the Silco onto our board here, start rolling down and see what we can find. Do I fully agree with all of these slams? Bramble's great, QSS is BIS Mordekaiser. Really good stuff. But the only thing that I would have done differently here in this spot, and again, it's hard to say. Like, we can't all play perfect in like a fucking like tourney setting. It's very stressful. But what I would have done here in this spot is probably roll first, see what we find, and then slam after, see if it's actually worth it or not. We do find Nasus 2, Silco 2 very quickly, which is really nice, and that means we have a strong tank and a strong backliner and a secondary carry on the way with the Mordekaiser 1. But you know, it's a bit risky to slam the blue buff the Morello first, because then what if we just find Mordekaiser 2? Then what? Like, wouldn't we have rather just like save the components for a little longer? I'm not entirely sure. But nonetheless, Ramblin doesn't get punished for this, and he is chilling with a Nasus 2 and a Silco 2. Now again, did I think that was the correct play? It's a little hard to say, but he did hit everything. So, I mean, in the end, it works out. But results-oriented analysis, was that really correct though? Was it the correct decision? I don't 1000% agree, but I still think it was very prudent to just slam and just commit, which is very great because not a lot of players struggle to do something like that. Again, 4-2 hits, augment choices. Now, again, I feel like I've disagreed with Ramblin multiple times throughout the entirety of this video, because what he does here is insane, in my opinion, an absolutely insane play. But let me know if you would do it the same. Oh, by the way, if you have chapstick lying around, use it, please. Like, God bless. Like, if you have a significant other and you got chapped ass lips, like, come on, dude. Like, what are you doing? Anyways, going here, Curse Crown, Cybernetic Leech, Infernal Contract. I think Leech gets a really bad rep. I don't know why. I personally think it's just because Soju yaps about Leech all the time, even though I don't even think Leech is a bad augment. I mean, maybe I don't know the reasoning. I don't know why people like hate on Leech so much. I don't think it's bad. But Infernal Contract, Leech, and Curse Crown. But in this spot so far, in my opinion, Leech makes the most sense. We do have 4 units who are itemized right now, and the leech value actually goes crazy on Mordekaiser, Silco, and surprisingly enough, Nasus. Nasus actually really likes items like BT, Hodge, and healing in general, just because he is a juggernaut. So leech doesn't make a lot of, well, leech, sorry, does make a lot of sense from this spot in my opinion. So quite honestly, it's not a Curse Crown spot for sure. Our spot is not good enough for Curse Crown. Definitely, but he rerolls leech immediately. Which is strange. He has like no healing, but he hits What the Forge, and then What the Forge I don't think is ideal in this spot. What the Forge is already pretty heavily nerfed ever since the ord item changes. It's now sitting at a very comfortable 4.5, so it's not bad. It's actually 4.57 in Masters Plus at 4.2, but you get the idea. Not terrible in my opinion, not terrible. We can definitely low roll with it nowadays, so even harder than before, which is kind of not great. And again, that's because of the nerfs, so it's not that great. Rolls Noxus Crown, which I thought from this spot, Noxus Crown makes sense. I think it makes sense. Noxus Crown from this spot, I think makes sense. The reason being is that you can Noxus Crown the Nasus or the Silco here, and you could like maybe have a free open slot, and then tech into 7 Noxus later down the line, and then just call that your board. Obviously you could also like Noxus Crest like somebody else maybe, I'm not really sure, but or maybe even Noxus Crest like the Nas. Like, it's Nasus or Silco from the spot. But the idea is that it's basically you're playing up a Fawn, and then you have a really large cap coming down the line, because we have Inconsistency, we're sitting on 30 gold, we can hit level 8 pretty comfortably from the spot. I would take Noxus Crown in the spot every single time. I think it's good for tempo, you get a free open slot here, but no. Ramblin takes Infernal Contract from this spot. Why? Okay, I know why. I see the line of reasoning. Infernal Contract from the spot. Ramblin right now, he's 45 HP. He's a lot lower than a lot of the other people in this lobby. Infernal Contract is usually an augment that screams, I'm just trying to top 4. Because if you look at the stats of Infernal Contract, it's a 4.7. It actually averages worse than what the Forge. But we know already that in terms of our itemization here, there's nothing, it's not like our items are bad. We already fixed our itemization issue with Pandora's items, so that's not a problem anymore. The problem is that Ramblin, at least from this spot, is probably thinking, hey, my spot is probably fucked. It's not the best of boards. We have strong 2-star forecasts and we're flexing very nicely here. But this board in general is not that strong. It's not. It's going to start falling off pretty soon. So Infernal Contract is screaming, hey, I'm just trying to secure a top 4 as soon as possible. So he's going to start rolling here. Try to roll down all the way down to about 50 here. Try to look for any spikes that are potentially any good, right? And we're sitting on like what? Like a Noxus, English. Not a Noxus pair, sorry. The Mordekaiser pair. Katarina pair. And like his board, it's like, it's strong. For a 4-2 board, it's strong. But what is the game plan from the spot, right? That is what we're trying to figure out here. Now, I personally don't fucking know. The plan from this spot just seems to be just secure a top 4 and get the fuck out, right? But what are we rolling for from this spot, right? Darius 3 with no items, Katarina 3 with no items. These are not really strong units, right? And so teching down out of 5 to 3 is really prudent. And I actually think that's really nice here. We get Virulent onto our Silco here, and we get to play a little bit of extra strategist with the Azir. And also, Shrima, we get to ascend the Nasus, which is super great. Nasus becomes a super tank, which is super nice. So, in terms of flex play, all makes sense. The problem is the future. When is the future not a problem? Like, you know, climate change and everything, and I don't want to talk about that right now. That's very depressing. But here we see that we have the Mordekaiser potentially on carousel. We don't get the Mordekaiser, unfortunately enough, so we do succumb to getting the Ahri here, and I like the Ahri pick a lot here. We do have Pandora's items here. We're basically guaranteed a Noxus spat. All we need is a belt, but nonetheless, now we have an open slot here, so now what, right? And here, he hits 1 Scion. 2 off Katarina 3, we hit a Scion. What do? Do you sell the Katarinas here, or do you play the Scion 1? What do? We've invested a lot of money into this Katarinas, by the way. We're 2 off. It's not that far away. What would you do in this spot, right? Ramblin says, fuck the Katarinas. Fuck the Katarinas. And quite honestly, I agree. Katarina 3, no items, kind of whiz. And already in terms of like the rogue tier list, if you will, Katarina is kind of bottom of the barrel. I think the only rogue unit worse than Katarina is Kiana. It's probably Graves, Echo, Katarina, Kiana, right? Probably. Maybe Kiana and Katarina, you can maybe make an argument for either. Or, this is assuming they're all 3-star, right? But Katarina is like the worst one out of all of them because of the way that her ability works, right? It's not ideal. So, getting rid of the Katarina is pretty prudent. I like that a lot here. And we're sort of chilling on this 3 Noxus, like, Mordekaiser Silco board, which is very interesting. It's not a board you see very often here, but I like it. It's very flexible. You have the Azir here in the backline for a potential tertiary carry. You have a strong front line. It's very AP centric though, which is a little unfortunate. We do want to mix up the damage here whenever possible, but nonetheless, still good enough. And even though we are taking a pretty fat loss in this spot here, our spot doesn't look that bad. We do have a bunch of HP to be climbing up if we want to go securing anything higher than a 4th here. But if we look at the rest of the lobby, Common Quail, Costco, Jummy, who has DSG in front of his name. I don't know if he's trolling or not. Or maybe he's actually part of DSG now. I don't fucking know. And Bidet Boy. So, we have a bunch of people who are sort of really low HP here. So, now the question is, okay, so how do we secure a top 4 from the spot here, right? So, what do we do in the spot? We're going to be rolling here for swing 3, right? Sorry, I paused the video. I don't know why I did that. We're going to be rolling for swing 3 here. And oh my god, he actually gives up the Scion here, which is so interesting. He actually sells the Scion for a J4 1 here. And the reasoning is because J4 2 is better than Scion 1. And because we did get our Noxus Crest out of the anvil, or rather not the anvil, but from a, you know, from a drop, right? We got the belt, secured the belt. we are going to be able to play up another fawn, so we're able to tech out of the Scion here. Now, is it the correct move? I mean, it probably is. Like, who are we playing for 5 Noxus? Doesn't make any sense, right? So playing into the strategist here and also getting the ideally J42, and because we have a lot of money here to be spending, we're going to be sending it basically down to 0 here, trying to secure this J42. We don't want to break 10 if possible, but personally speaking, I think in this spot, I think you just break 10. I think you break 10 and you just try to secure your top 4. In this spot, and quite honestly, I think at 5-1, it's really important to be able to identify that at 5-1, it was actually pretty correct to just send it down until you hit J42. That is the only spike that matters in this scenario. Sure, he is holding Nasus and wants to hold on to some of that money to try to hit Nasus 3, but realistically speaking, unless you hit this J42, you gotta think about now, right? You need this J42 ASAP. You need to spike your board because this is the board. We're not going any higher than this board. This is the board that we're sitting on for the rest of the game here, right? So if this is the board that we're sitting on for the rest of the game here, and we know that, right? And we know we're never going level 8, there's nothing better to throw onto our board, maybe unless we get like a very lucky Heimerdinger. We have like 40 gold to roll for the upgrades and everything. We're sitting on this J42. So we're sitting on J42, we need to spike immediately. So being able to identify rolling on 5-1 here and sending it down even deeper than he already did is something that a lot of players and myself struggle with, because it's very scary to do such a thing. But in this spot, I do think that was the correct choice. Here we do end up getting the Shiv here, which is again very surprising because keep your eyes peeled. Look at this carousel. Do you see anything else that might have been nice here? RFC. RFC was available on this carousel, and instead he goes for the Shiv. Very interesting choice here, and I think the reason why is just because he has a lot of AP on his board, so it's very smart to identify, hey, we have negative shred, let me just shiv the Mordekaiser real quick, get the 3 items on the boy. But also, even though RFC, yes, is bis Mordekaiser, we do, you know, we benefit our team a lot better here because we have the Azir and we have the Silco here if we just get the Shiv on our board. And I also love this. He also positions the Silco and his Mordekaiser on the same side every single time. Very, very prudent. Reason being, Silco throws a bunch of anti-heal with the Morello as well as the Virulent procs onto the board, and Mordekaiser will shiv the fuck out of everybody. So anybody who's inside the pool with the Mordekaiser, with the Silco, is going to have a very, very bad time. So here, we are chilling with a top 5 secured already, and Costco sitting at 6 HP, which is very, very unfortunate for him. So now it's very likely that we have secured our top 4. It's not impossible that we don't, but because Rainplosion and Doge are sitting at significantly higher HP threshold values, it's very unlikely that Costco is going to make it out here, and we're basically secured our top 4 from this spot. Really interesting use of Infernal Contracts here. Not really looking for the 3 stars except for, I guess, Swain, but instead trying to keep flexing into our strongest variation of a board that we can play given our current circumstances. Costco unfortunately does go 4th here, and we are, or sorry, 5th, and we are chilling with a top 4, and Ramblin's actually on a win streak here. Really, really good stuff. So what is the win condition now? Well, unfortunately, there's really nothing much else. Again, like I said before, this is sort of the strongest board that our board can ever be, unless we hit this 3-star Nasus. So the game plan now is probably sack 1 more if we can. Maybe slow roll a little bit here. Nope, he's just sending it. I guess he thinks he's 1 life. And he's just going to try to look for this Nasus 3. Picking up any forecast that he sees, picks up the Mordekaiser second, or second Mordekaiser. I don't know why I flipped the words in my head. But nonetheless, finds the Mordekaiser 2, doesn't find any of the other Nasuses, and unfortunately, this is probably where... Actually, is this where the story ends? I don't fucking know. Yep, this is where the story ends. And he takes 17. So he actually was 1 life, which is actually kind of amazing. I would have greeted it. I would have stayed alive for 1 more round. But I mean, I guess he's got the matchup when I am not surviving this. That is 17 damage. And sure enough, he ends with a 4th. So yes, this was not a 1st place game. This was not like, you know, some crazy like 1st, 2nd place. But rather, it's a very solid performance and a bunch of very interesting decisions were made in this game. So again, I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this game, because this is definitely a game that I thought was very interesting in terms of the way that it was played. But let me know what you think. Securing a top 4 is very, very good. Sometimes you can't go 1st, you can't go 2nd, actually most of the time. So securing a 4th, good stuff. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, take care guys, and happy climbing.